Hello, my name is Mike Colbreeze. I'm the Executive Director of the WIAA, and I just want to provide you with some updates on what's going on within the association office at this time of the year. We know you're busy wrapping up or getting wrapped up, or even maybe getting on the road to a little bit of R&R. And the association office kind of changes gears at this point. While we're just as busy as we are during the normal school year, it's kind of the time for us to look at what we've done this past year, make sure we're on target for next year, and make sure that everything that you need is what we're providing you. You know, like at this time, Cindy's busy working on the handbook and getting sure that that's in final form. John Miller is working on the sports that he has for next year and getting the eligibility material ready to roll, and also making sure that our concussion protocols are in place the way they are. Andy Barnes is working on all the sports that he normally does and is working to get set for Emerald City Kickoff Classic and for the volleyball invitational tournament that we have, this coming year. It'll be the weekend after Labor Day weekend. Brian Smith is working on eligibility, working on middle school information, and is also working on the fall workshop agendas to make sure that, again, we're providing you what you need for those fall workshops. And one of the main emphasis at that time will be to make sure that everybody understands ejection process and policies and what we do in this office if there's a concern about a particular ejection. The rest of the staff is either making sure that our enrollment materials are accurate, participation numbers are accurate. Cameron's working on making sure that the coaches school is running, because he'll be taking the handoff from Jim Meyerhoff after this year's coaches school. He and Cal Johnson will team share that in the future. Rita's working on the eligibility packet and making sure that we have all the data available from this year's reports. Connor's making sure that programs are ready to go, that all of our media information and all the other types of information that we disseminate ready to go. Andy Knapp making sure that our corporate partners are in place and that we are in good place with every one of them to make sure that we can renew those contracts. And me, well, I'm working on a number of different issues. Over the summer, I'll be visiting with various legislators to make sure that we're on the same page, that they understand how the association works, and talking about specific things regarding student eligibility and postseason access, those types of things that we've had issues with and that the legislature has expressed some concerns about. I'll also be wrapping up some information that we believe is vital for you when it comes to the RTO program. You received an email from this office last week regarding the RTO program and the fact that it's going to be renewed for another year, and that the fee for RTO, as prescribed by the agreement with the Washington Officials Association, will increase to $160,000. I want to talk about that a little bit, and I'm going to talk about a few other things as well. The current negotiations process is one that's been developed through a long history. When I first came here in 1993, there was an 18-member committee that got together and negotiated those fees. There was an officials representative and a school representative from each one of the 9 districts. And as you can imagine, you put 18 people in the room at the same time. There was a lot of discussion and a lot of give and take, and at times it could get a little bit contentious, and most of the time it was fairly unmanageable. And so both associations decided at that time that it would be good to try to reduce the size of the committee so that it could be a more workable, manageable situation. So the size was reduced. That worked for a while, and then again it became a little bit more contentious, and obviously needed to have some adjustments made as well. What we were finding is that officials, while at one time many times came from the ranks of school personnel, they were administrators, coaches in their off seasons, officiating a different sport, had a little bit different mindset because they were people who were no longer in our buildings. They were people who were out in our businesses around our communities, and so came at it in some cases from a different perspective. So the decision was made at that point that what we would do was make the negotiation team members of the Washington Officials Association Board of Directors and the WIAA Board of Directors. So it became 4 team members from the WOA and 4 team members from the WIAA. And that's worked fairly well. Part of the concerns that have happened over the last couple of years really evolve around a couple things in my mind. First of all, we kept hearing concerns from district directors and administrators from around the state about how unmanageable administrative fees, all the percentages that were being charged against the game fee were becoming. Different areas of the state were being charged as much as up to 20%, and even in some cases a little bit more if there were check writing things going on that made it more important for officials associations in their minds to get more than what was really there as far as administrative opportunities for fees. At about that same time, there was a concern about mileage, service areas, and that type of thing. So because of all that information, the WIA board approached the WOA board about going to a statewide agreement so that fees would be consistent from around the state. Not only game fees, which had always been consistent, but a help with mileage issues, and then also some way of roping in a consistent administrative fee, because the philosophy was it shouldn't cost any more to assign a game, write checks in one area of the state than in another area of the state. So the Washington Officials Association agreed at that time that they would be willing to entertain the idea of a statewide agreement. In order to make that happen, both sides were concerned that to make sure that both were as committed to that as possible, that there would be some incentives driven into developing support for and the approval of a statewide agreement. So there was a separate track that was developed regarding fees with incentives that if the statewide agreement was approved by the Officials Association, game fees would increase at a certain amount. And up to about that time, game fees had been driven in large part by the raises that were giving state employees by the state legislature. And at about that time, the state legislature changed how it was doing some of that. So that no longer became one of those markers that was used in those statewide game fees. So at that point, both organizations structured what at that point over a 5-year period was within that 5-year period an $8 increase incrementally in officials' fees, $1 here, $2 there in each of those years. Again, to total $2 at the end of that 5 years. And this school year, the 2013-14 school year, would have been the last of that 5-year agreement. The contentious part was that a few years ago, the association asked the Officials Association to delay some of those increases. We started to see a real downturn in the economy, and school people were telling us we really can't afford fee increases. So we went to the Officials Association. They agreed to freeze raises at that point, and so there was no increase. When we went back to the Officials Association within a year or so and said we're still not able to provide any kind of increase, the Washington Officials Association said, well, we've got to do something. We need to figure out a way to make officials feel like their role in school programs is a valued one and that those people are getting some kind of compensation for that. The Officials Association, under the direction of Todd Stordahl, came up with a program called RTO, and it was really a way to, in a sense, improve officiating. And when you think about it and you look at it from the WIA's perspective, the whole issue of, okay, we're going to flatline, so to speak, officials increases, and we're going to develop a program that will work to do all those things that you've been having concerns about and your coaches have for all those years about, are the officials in the right place at the right time? Are they in shape? Do they know the rules? Are they accountable? How do they learn the game? How do they officiate the game? Are they really part of the team? That's a pretty good deal. Officials were happy to be getting some dollars to develop a statewide training program so that whether an official was in the Colville Association or the Lower Columbia or the Skagit Valley or the Pacific Northwest Association, they were going to be getting the same type of training. That was invaluable to the associations as a partnership. And that's how it was looked at. It was as a partnership to improve officiating. What became obvious is, and I'll take partial responsibility for this, is that a lot of people didn't know what the RTO program was. And so it became a real contentious issue about, okay, how is that money being spent, rather than what is the RTO program, when the focus really should have been on what is the RTO program, what's the role of the Officials Association, what's the role of the State Association, what's the role of every individual official and their local association, and every school, athletic director, and coaches to improve officiating, which is really the focus of RTO, improving officiating. And that's unfortunate, because the RTO program is a very valuable program. It's geared to what we want to do, the improvement of officiating. So then the issue came up, well, are we going to continue RTO? Because there was a lot of concern that officials and schools didn't know what it was. The WA Executive Board, when it met with its team of negotiators, said, we really believe in the RTO program. It's still saving schools an awful lot of money, because when you think about it, when over these last 5 years, there should have been an $8 fee increase in officiating, and there only was a $3 within that 3 years. There are $5 of fee increases that could have been passed on to the schools. And probably, when you look back on it, that's a substantial amount of money. I mean, I know a lot of people looking at, well, the association paid $80,000 for 2 different years, and that was a $150 charge to the smaller schools, the 1Bs, 2Bs, and 1As, and then a $250 to the 2As, 3As, and 4As. That $80,000 and $80,000, that's a lot of money in and of itself. And the concerns about what is the RTO program and how that money is being spent was still there. But then when you weigh it in against that and realize that there's an additional $5 fee per official per game that could have been implemented, again, that's a substantial, quite a bit more money than would have been spent if the RTO program wouldn't have been put in place. So the improvement of officiating and the ability to more feasibly match the amount of dollars that the schools could and would spend towards officiating became the discussion. That's why we stuck with the RTO program. In that email that I sent out last week, I was summarizing what the program's attempts would be, and I apologize for including that $400 mark in there, because really, if you look at the amount that you paid the first 2 years, if you were a 1B or 2B school of $150, that will now increase to $300. If you were a 2A, 3A, 4A, and you were paying, what were you paying, $250, that will now, you'll now pay $500. That will all be billed to the member schools. And I realize that you want an understanding of how that money is going to be spent. And so now that comes to me and to the WOA to make sure that everyone, not only school people, but officials, understand what the RTO program is, what the goals are, what the expectations are, and how those will be measured. That really all is in place. It just hasn't been sold, hasn't been explained to school people. I understand that. I understand the angst about that. I understand you're wanting to know what that is. The WOA, during its meetings with the WA Executive Board, has also shown the dollars and cents on how that has been spent. And I will continue to work with the Officials Association to make sure of that whole dollars and cents issue. If you have concerns about the RTO program, what it should and shouldn't be, or any other issue, call me. I'm the one that probably has the better understanding of the WIA side of this issue. And I'll be glad to explain it to you. I think that's part of my responsibility. My direct line is 425-988-6156, and I'm pretty certain that I can explain to you why we are where we are if this video explanation doesn't do that. That's my job, and I always want to make clear to you where we are and where we're going. So again, thanks for your patience. Thanks for listening to this entire explanation of the RTO program. And again, if you have any questions or concerns, let me know. Most of all, have a great summer. We'll be doing installments every month via video, so that rather than reading something, you can watch something. Brian will do a thorough job of explaining the ejection process, because I know there's concerns about that. I also know there's concerns about accountability for officials, and that actual system is in place within each local association. If you have concerns, my hope is that you will drive it through me. The WIAA side of this ledger is the appropriate avenue for school people to approach issues about officiating. Beyond that, have a great summer, and again, if I can be any assistance, let me know. Take care.